I wanted to ask you, do you know what a language is? Do you know what that is? Do you know what language you speak?
English.
You speak English. It's something about actually learning a second language that seems to change children's beliefs.
At least that's what was discovered in new research in Montreal.
Bonjour. Did you learn that in school?
Yeah.
Psychology professor Dr. Byers-Heinlein conducted a study with a test group of 5- and 6-year-old kids.
We sit down with them in front of a laptop and we show them some pictures and tell them some stories. So this is a mommy cat and a daddy cat, and they sound like this. And this is a mommy duck and a daddy duck, and they sound like this. The mommy cat and the daddy cat, they had a little baby named Benjamin. And right when Benjamin was born, he went to live with the other mommy and daddy. So in this study, we were interested in how children understand how different people acquire certain traits. Do you think he's going to make sounds like this or sounds like that when he grows up?
Sound like this.
He's going to sound like the cats, all right. So from that, we see where do kids think that someone's native language comes from.
For a preschooler living in Montreal, Quebec, that might be a complicated question. There are language communities: Anglophones, the English speakers; Francophones, the French speakers; and allophones.
Outside of Montreal, Quebec is comparatively homogenous, but Montreal really is an exception to this. As the urban centre, it does have over 50% of French native speakers, but we've got not just this around 13% of Anglophones, but we also have over 30% allophones, so those who have neither English nor French as their mother tongue.
The majority of kids in Montreal have to go to French schools, but whether they attend an English or a French school, they're usually encouraged to learn another language early on. The result is a city divided, but with many residents speaking 1, 2, or 3 languages.
It's really interesting to think about how kids develop different attitudes as they're exposed to these different languages. What we found in our study was that bilingual children were a little bit less essentialist. So kids who had learned a second language didn't have this strong tendency to believe that everything was innate, that you're born with it, rather than being learned.
Now, there are different types of bilinguists. Sequential bilinguists who learn the languages one after another, and simultaneous bilinguists who learn the languages at the same time. For this study, that distinction made a difference.
The simultaneous bilinguals, their beliefs were very similar to the monolinguals. When Benjamin grows up and makes sound, do you think he's going to sound like the cat or like the duck? It was only the sequential bilinguals who were different. So the sequential bilinguals were more likely to understand that traits can be acquired from the environment. And where we think this is coming from is that the sequential bilinguals have actually had this experience of learning something very new. Now, we'd originally thought that they might just understand that about language, that they would understand that, language is something that you have to learn. What we actually found in the study is they tended to believe this about everything. So they also thought, for example, that a dog raised by owl parents would grow up to fly rather than run around. But this is important later on because in other research we see links between strong essentialist beliefs and prejudice and stereotypes. So when you tend to think that something's built into a person based on their certain background, you might tend to have stronger stereotypes against them,
which could become a problematic tendency, especially in a linguistically and culturally diverse city like Montreal. But the preschool age might just be the perfect time to identify that thinking pattern, because it's also an optimal age for learning.
This might be a way to start to open kids' minds by learning a second language, to think a little bit more about how experience actually affects how people are. Okay, great. Thank you so much, Liam. You did a great job.
For Mountain Lake Journal, I'm Tamika Weatherspoon.